I have a question for you, and I have a question for you guys in the comment section as well. Now that Kendrick Lamar has had a super successful run with this new album, where do you think he goes after this? Because there's so much up for interpretation at this point.
I think there's so many different directions that he could take on the next album, and I think that it can come sooner than we think because Sounwave, which is Kendrick's main producer, produced 13 out of the 18 songs on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers,
Yes, sir.
has confirmed that they're already starting to work on a new album. So this is a quote from an interview that he did with Complex where he said, "We're starting on the next one now." He said that he doesn't actually mind being on tour and creating new music there because, he says, that's one of the main reasons why I go on tour with him, is to create the next album. We can't skip a beat. We have to just keep going. There's no breaks.
So that's what's crazy, though, is that like he's kind of in the middle right now of having a super successful tour while creating his next work. So how do you think that affects the influence of the next album? Because he's kind of spoken about like where he's at in his career right now as far as like being on top of the game and where he sees his career going.
Yeah, and speaking about being on top of the game, it was super interesting because in Family Ties, he kind of had that energy about smoking on top fives, being hailed as the greatest, and then there was a complete switch when you ended up hearing the entirety of Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers because he ended up telling people, I'm not your savior. I'm not the one that you regard so highly. He took himself off the pedestal, and for the first time in Kendrick's career, it seemed as if he was no longer hungry for that title of being the best rapper in the game.
And how do you feel about that? Because like obviously that's so prominent within a lot of his bodies of work, and he always feels as if, you know, he's the one that's going to have to push a level forward on hip-hop, and he's going to have to be creating the next masterpieces. But now it's sort of a different era for Kendrick Lamar because most of the catalog, well, probably all of his catalog that he's going to be releasing after Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is going to be under pglang. So do you think that has an effect on how he's going to be releasing this these next albums, excuse me, as far as like release date goes, vision for the album, collaboration, all that type of stuff? Because even with Mr. Morale, there wasn't that big of a push from TDE themselves. So it leaves me wondering, you know?
It kind of threw me off a little bit, the fact that like he just did an interview with Citizen Magazine and he said, I want to take the greatest off of it. I want to give something to people that they can hold on to. So whether it touches 100 million people or just inspires one, I want to be that person, talking about wanting to drop his ego. And that kind of stunned me just because this is the same rapper who less than 10 years ago challenged every rapper in the game on the Control verse in 2013, who really wanted the throne. And now it kind of feels like the guy who always raised the bar is deciding to drop it. It's as if like Cristiano Ronaldo would come out and say, yeah, I don't care to win the next Champions League trophy.
I think like, that it's different though, because like I don't think that it's going to take away from Kendrick making like, you know, fantastic projects again. So example, like it definitely affected the music on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers because as you said, the content matter changed slightly. There was a different sentiment behind the performances and he took a different direction with the album. Well, at least different in what he did with his older albums. But what's interesting about this now is like, how does that sentiment shape up while, you know, you're creating music with guys like Tana Leone, people like Baby Keem, you know, these super talented but young and raw artists that still have catalogs to develop, but you're kind of the one being there and guiding them through this journey. So do you think that that has a part to play in how he's going to attack this next album?
I think it does have a huge part to play, bro. And I mean, when we're thinking about it, like, do you agree with the quote that's been said by so many fucking people that you're inspired by the people that you're around?
Absolutely.
You believe in that?
For sure.
And I feel like I've seen that progression from Kendrick over the years, all the way back to when he started working with Baby Keem in 2017 during the Damn sessions. For example, on on the song God, where he's rapping like, you know, going to the bank, like, aha, like you started seeing that Kendrick's style became looser on a track like that.
Even like something like Yeah, for example, like that was a much like I would say like more laid back and like I would say I don't want to say like lo-fi because it doesn't necessarily make sense, but like more relaxed,
more
energy.
mellow.
And not only that, but it was super unique from any cadence or let's say flow that he delivered before. So I wonder if that same thing is going to happen here on this next album because Mr. Morale was interesting because you also got a double album. He gave you so much material, and I think it was merited though because now looking that the album has dropped, it's been a couple of months, I still have a lot of material to reference. I still have so many songs I go back to, and I think it was a good play. But maybe does he take more of a stripped back effect right now just because he delivered you a double album? Now is the time to go in a different direction.
I think so, bro. I think he's gonna make music for him because that's kind of the sentiment I got off of Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, is that this was him kind of giving all of his truths and spilling everything out on the table. And I feel like now that he's given us, think about this, every single Kendrick Lamar album has been a conceptual album. And for the first time ever, I feel like he might stray away from that and give us an album that is just him having fun, like a song like Range Brothers, where for 20 seconds straight, he's repeating, let's get this shit top of the morning, where he's kind of just having fun on the track, trying to ride the beat and focusing maybe a bit less on the messaging and the political aspect of things. And how do you feel about that? Like, how would you feel if Kendrick made an entire album where he's a bit more quirky in terms of flows, in terms of style?
I think it would suit him though, just because, like, especially if this is all under pglang, right? Like, you have Baby Keem right next to him on that end, and obviously they feed off of each other. There's so many inspirations that Baby Keem has taken, and there's so many inspirations that Kendrick has taken, and I find that they find a really nice middle point within that quirkiness. And what's also nice about their collaborations, and I think what Kendrick could use here to his advantage, is all the unpredictability factors that he could put into a track list. So it would be completely different than anything he's ever attacked before, while still having this new loose and fun concept to it. So maybe there is a concept behind it, but just this time it's like, okay, I want to have fun here, and I want to spread good vibes, and I want to have bangers on this.
So you feel like he's going to try to establish maybe a distinct sound for pglang? Like, that's kind of what I'm picking up on, because if you look at Tana Leon and Baby Keem, while they're great artists that I respect so much and I adore their music, let's not say that they're top-tier lyricists by any means. You know what I mean? It's not like Kendrick Lamar signed a J. Cole or a Lupe Fiasco. So I feel like, will that make him maybe drop the bar work a little bit to kind of fit more into their realm?
But I do think that it creates more flexibility though on where they could go. Because if you have just a personnel full of lyricists, right? Like, there's not a lot of room to wiggle musically as far as like what Kendrick could provide, what Baby Keem could provide, and maybe what Tana Leon could provide. And where I see Tana Leon going into it is more like Travis Scott type music, if that makes sense to you. I don't know how to explain it. Just more atmospheric music.
Melodic trap as well.
Exactly. That has, like, there's a futuristic tone to his voice. I love all the vocal effects he uses. Not only that, but his production choices are very good. Then even for someone like Baby Keem, like, I think, yes, like, he's not a top tier lyricist, but you've gotten really nice performances from him lyrically. Example, on something like Scapegoats, or let's say even something like, I believe was like Savior Interlude. Like, you had these performances where Baby Keem was delivering verses and it made you stop and stare for a second. Oh, okay, there's a story behind this sound. There's something he wants to achieve with this. So maybe what this leads is, like, maybe Kendrick is working on Baby Keem's next album, and maybe there's a whole different sound that's going to come out of that project. Sure. And then they forward up maybe with a collaboration album, or let's say a pglang label tape. Like, there's so many options for him to go into. But what about the concept of having another Untitled Unmastered? Because what's interesting is that this album was 5 years in the making, and you can make a lot of fucking music in 5 years, right? There's so much shit that you could go through. Do you think he would ever take those loose recordings and put them into another track list and maybe disguise it as a Mr. Marl and the Big Steppers deluxe version?
Absolutely.
Or maybe an Untitled Unmastered Part 2?
Because let's not forget, Mixed by Ali, who was, Kendrick's, main engineer for the longest time, he went on to say that Kendrick Lamar has 6 albums worth of unreleased music. And when you're looking at, let's say, the To Pimp a Butterfly sessions, that was about 2 years in the making, and we got a whole B-sides record of that with Untitled Unmastered. Yes. So I feel like it's super likely that the next drop from Kendrick is maybe a new deluxe for Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers.
But that was in conversation for Damn, though, and it didn't play out that way, right? Like, people were thinking that the Blue album was going to be coming out after the Damn album,
But
right?
we also have a lot of demos that are leaking of songs like Mother I Sober, of songs like Rich Spirit, where you're getting to hear these alternate versions of these songs that he might decide to release, just because if you check them out, like, they're super quality, and it's cool to see the way that his pen evolved during the making of these songs too. So I feel like he's going to be dropping way sooner than people expect. I could see Kendrick dropping either a deluxe version to Mr. Morale, or maybe an Untitled Unmastered type project. In 2023.
As a fan, what would you prefer, though? Like, if you had the choice, let's say Kendrick Lamar was sitting in front of you right now and he asked you, man, what do you want from me? Like, what project? It could be an EP, it could be a 3-song pack, it could be another double album, it could be a collaboration album, it could be a whole fucking label tape. What would you want to see from Kendrick Lamar moving forward? And what would you think would suit his career best moving forward?
Very good question. I think that when it comes to me and, like, my personal enjoyment out of Kendrick's music, he's always been that poet. He's always been that revolutionary, who's been a voice of a generation. And I don't want him to stop with those types of messages. I mean, he's kind of like almost taken a messianic type duty in terms of kind of speaking for so many people, and I feel like it was cool to see him, move away from that for Mr. Morale, but I still want the complex narratives. I still want those concept albums where he's blowing your mind in terms of what he's able to bring into a story. So do I want him to go into the more quirky, let me just ride and float with Baby Keem on a song for an entire album? that's not what I want. I want Kendrick to gun for that top spot.
You see, it wouldn't be my first choice. It wouldn't be my first choice.
What would be your first choice?
But I think like maybe taking like more of a meditative standpoint from like the whole like philosophical approach to his music, right? Like maybe still like having that worldview be prominent within all these track lists, having those meaningful tracks, but kind of being more stripped back about them and rather like being less braggadocious in your face about them, like he maybe was on other tracks, and just something more meditative, maybe something more relaxed and calm from Kendrick. I'd also love to see him maybe tap into different genres, because we've gotten all rap albums from him, but maybe there's a side of him that we don't know where he could tackle different production styles, or he could go into different types of I don't even know, bro. Like I just feel
the
like
fucking alter ego, bro. I'm still waiting on the alter ego, man.
We were so convinced on that alter ego, and I think that it could maybe still happen though. Like imagine Kendrick goes into a direction where he's now shaping the future landscape of hip hop with the help of Tana Leone and Baby Keem, and that's how they move forward with everything. Plus, I also love the visuals and everything going on with it. Like I love that Dave Free is at the helm of all of this, just because he's a creative genius. I mean, I love his visuals and everything that he does for the branding of this whole run. So having him behind these projects as well will add a second, like let's say, feel to it, you know, because when you go back to, let's say, Good Kid, Mad City, and you see like Schoolboy Q's handwriting on that album and throughout the track list, it's so fucking cool, bro. You know, like it's awesome to feel like, yo, TDE was actually a part of the building process within these track lists. So how does this now change into this next phase within Kendrick's career and having Dave Free at the helm of everything? And I'm sure Dave Free did so much stuff for him back then too, but it's just like, now I really do feel like you could feel that influence within these next projects. So I'd like to see that as well.
Absolutely.
Going forward.
I just think that Kendrick's going to have a lot of creative freedom moving forward now that he doesn't have to necessarily answer to anybody at Top Dog Entertainment. And I think that when it comes down to his next album, I don't think we're going to have to wait that long, bro. Like, but what's your prediction for a release date for his next album? Forget about B-sides or deluxes, his new album.
It's interesting because he's spoken about having writer's block for 2 years after Damn release and content. And I mean, that's kind of a situation, just because like who knows if he gets another writing block, right? Then like he just decides like, hey, like I'm not in the best position to be writing right now. I don't think I could deliver my best material. Let me step back for a bit and let me actually just see what I could do. Like I would respect that from him. Like I think Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is strong enough as a track list to stay in my rotation for the next 3 years and be happy with it and be able to enjoy it. Plus, it's a double-sided album, so you have more material to reference, and arguably you could say that that kind of maybe diminishes replay value over time because you won't be revisiting as many songs. But I think in the grand scheme of things, you could fall in love with songs over time just because you haven't revisited them as much. So in that matter, like, okay, I obviously want a Kendrick Lamar album every single fucking week, but that's unrealistic, you know? And I don't think I want that anymore, just because I was so happy with the effect and the turnout of Mr. Morale that I think waiting a bit and working on pglang and working on this Baby Keem solo project or on a band tape would probably be maybe one of the best options he's ever taken. It would be super unique for him as well, you know?
It would be really interesting, and, you know, going back to, like, the kind of sound that he could tackle, even just that soul funk type instrumentals that he was tackling on a song like The Hard Part 5, I'd love to see him do a full album with that, just because you're really getting some of his most heartfelt writing, and also him just tackling into different perspectives from different people like he did with Nipsey Hussle. Like, that's something that really struck a chord with me, and it's just going to be super exciting to see where he goes next. So guys, let us know down in the comments, where do you think Kendrick Lamar is going next? When do you think we'll get word of a new album or maybe a deluxe? Let us know your thoughts and predictions in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you guys are new here and want to stay up to date with everything Kendrick Lamar, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and we'll catch you in the next one.